So creativity is very useful in all areas of life, whether you're a video editor like myself who needs it for work, whether you're a designer that just likes making things, whether you just want more creative problem solving in your day-to-day life, it's very useful. But let's be honest, sometimes that creativity just disappears. No matter what you try and do, you sit down to start a project and just nothing happens. So that is why in today's video I'm going to show you 5 simple ways you can boost your creativity today. So hopefully by the end of this video you can go back to whatever project you're working on with a bit more inspiration. So number 1 is steal like an artist. And it's this idea that it's better to emulate and study work that inspires you instead of just directly copying it. Because no art is truly unique. You can take other people's ideas and with tiny intentional tweaks turn it into something completely different. So I want you to find any creative piece of work that inspires you and try and capture the essence of it without directly just ripping it off. So if you're an editor like me, that might be replicating some kind of editing style or a new technique that you like. If you're a designer, you might try and look for posters or clothing designs. If you're a photographer, you could analyze compositions and color theory within photos that you like and try and deconstruct the piece that you found inspiration from and take elements that you like the most while trying to add in your own kind of flair to it. Virgil Abloh had a similar approach called the 3% rule, which is this idea that you only need to alter something by 3% to make it your own. This is really powerful because it removes the pressure to create something completely unique and reinvent the wheel when you don't really need to. You can take some other idea and change it a tiny amount and it can look completely different. So again, find some work that speaks to you, break it down and put your own spin on it. And number 2, look for alternative inspiration. It's no surprise that if you look for inspiration where everyone else is, you're going to produce work like everyone else. So start looking outside the box. Really try to notice things and observe the details. Like while you're on a walk, what kind of trees do you see? How long is the grass? What sounds are the birds making? And write down as much of this as possible as well because it will be important later on. Also, expose yourself to content that you wouldn't normally consume. Watch a foreign movie, for example. Or a debate with people that you don't normally agree with, or a book that's completely outside of what you'd normally read. And the reason you should do this is because you'll start noticing connections between ideas that previously weren't related at all. For example, maybe the trees you saw on your walk connect with a phrase you heard in that foreign movie, and then that sparks an idea for your next big project. And as Steve Jobs famously said, creativity is just connecting things. So if you can find links between ideas in places most people aren't looking, and make this a regular practice, you'll never run out of creative inspiration. And number 3, create under constraints. I've personally found one of the best ways to improve my creativity is to limit my options. This might sound kind of backwards, but if you have too many options, it kind of kills your creativity, because if you have endless possibilities, you have way too much to choose from, and in my experience, it can just paralyze you and you don't create anything. But when you add constraints, it forces you to think differently and be resourceful. And there's a few ways you can do this. So first of all is time limits. So the rule here is set a timer, and within that time frame you have to get some output done. So in my case it would be edit a video. So I'd set a timer for 60 minutes, and within those 60 minutes I'd have to get a video done no matter what. And that forces you to really simplify the process. With this constraint you really have no time to overthink, so if that's your main issue right now, this might be a good option for you. Next up is restriction. So this idea is to limit yourself to one action within the creative process. So I've done this in graphic design before, where you limit yourself to only one color in a poster, or one font, or one object. And this just removes any unnecessary options within the creative process. You just need to focus on one thing, and if you do the one thing, you've succeeded. It technically removes the creative aspect entirely, but allows you to create something. So technically, it's still creative. Does that make sense? Next up is random input. This is a fun one because all you need to do is look around the room, pick an object and create something based on that object. So for example, if I was struggling on what to edit today, I could look around my desk and I could make an ad about Ray-Ban's glasses. I could use this pen and the whiteboard behind this camera to do some kind of match cut with words. So I could write them out on this whiteboard, capture them with my camera and stack them together in the timeline. Or I could film the pen itself and do some cool animation with this. So yeah, just pick an object anywhere in your room right now. Whatever your creative field is, whatever you're struggling to create right now, use that object in some kind of way to help aid the creative process. Next up is the opposite challenge. So whatever you're most comfortable creating, just do the complete opposite. So if you're most comfortable with like a minimalist style of editing, maybe try like a more detailed 3D style like in After Effects. And if you're most comfortable with the 3D style, maybe try a minimalist style. you get the idea. So all of these challenges really force you to get out of your comfort zone when you're creating and think of new ideas pretty much on the spot. But if none of that works, number 4 is change your environment. It's pretty crazy how much your environment plays an impact on what you end up creating, but it makes sense. If you sit in the same room every day at the same desk, looking at the same screen, making the same kind of work, it's not going to build much creativity and your brain just starts to run on autopilot. So sometimes all you need is a change of scenery to spark new ideas. And you don't need to move across the world for this to work properly. You can keep things simple. You can work in a coffee shop instead of working at home. You can even face a different direction in the room that you work in normally. You can rearrange parts of your room, move where your desk is. You can put new things on your wall. You can replace posters and change what's on your desk itself. It can be really small changes that just change the feel of where you work. A simple shift like this is all it really takes to change your perspective sometimes, which can lead to new ideas. It doesn't even have to be the physical space that you change. You can change the time that you work in as well. So if you normally work early in the morning, if possible, you can shift that to work in the afternoon or at night and see how that changes how you think and the ideas you come up with. Also, I feel like this one's been said an awful lot, but if you're struggling with creativity, just go on a walk. Sometimes all you need to finish a project and come up with new ideas is 30 minutes outside. I just want to clarify as well, like I said before, you don't need to move halfway across the world for this to work. You don't even need to necessarily move at all. The idea here isn't to move, it's to break the regular patterns and routines that you're in currently. So if you can do that by switching up the time you work or playing music that you don't normally listen to, that might be enough to generate some new ideas and boost your creativity. And number 5, don't be so hard on yourself. In my own experience, the times where I've been the least creative are the times where I've been overthinking the process constantly and making up scenarios in my head about what the client might think and doubting my quality of work. And all of these negative thought loops just stop me from getting on with the creative process. When we're overly harsh with ourselves like this, our focus tends to narrow, which makes thinking creatively really difficult. Like, to make truly creative work, you need to be willing to take risks and make something that isn't quite perfect. But too much pressure and self-doubt can cause us to take the easy path instead of experimenting and coming up with new ideas. So do keep these 5 points in mind when you sit down to create your next project, and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any future videos. And thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.